Okay, no, I can make this better. I'm going to explain what I'm going to do to you, or not do to you, but do with you here. So I was drawing yesterday and I just was having a really good time. So I'm gonna make a drawing from life here, looking at myself, and we will see where this goes. So I am gonna switch over to the drawing cam right now. Yeah. So it's the same thing I was painting with yesterday, but this time I'm using graphite, so it'll be a very different experience altogether. But I'm just gonna start, and if you have any questions or want to ask me anything, I'm gonna turn this into a YouTube video too. So if you would like to leave a comment and ask me anything about drawing or something that I don't state during the stream or during the video, if you're watching, please do, and I will answer. Let's begin. What's happening? Or that change of perspective that happens when you have a paper lying directly perpendicular to your body. So if you've ever drawn someone on a subway car or something, it's kind of that same feeling where maybe you don't have the ideal platform for observing or seeing your drawing itself. Right now I'm just using kind of little lines to denote where form starts and to kind of see these moving moments of light that are happening across my face. And I don't like to commit to anything too hard in a drawing. It's really interesting for me to see what happens in between marks, or see what happens when record contradicts itself. And that's kind of what these little notations, or this, I call it a shorthand, so these abbreviations really allow for. Yeah. I am taking this shorthand that I've developed over years of practicing and just kind of turning it into a portrait. So we all have our own ways of recording space in 2 dimensions. So if you're drawing, you've learned tools, techniques from various people, various online media, various books, or just experimenting yourself. And those are a part of your shorthand. Those are a part of your individual kind of navigation through art or drawing. Specifically, drawing is really good. It's is a really good place to see this shorthand evolve, or see it appear. If you get a chance to ask your favorite painter or other type of artist to draw, it's tends to be the preliminary stage for a lot of work, is drawing and drafting. And you can really see, you learn so much about a person by the way that they render a drawing, or that they start to think about space, or start to think about identity, or symbols. The semiotics of drawing is something that someone like me doesn't deal with a lot. I'm not making a blueprint or I'm not doing a storyboard. But that's another way that drawing can be a shorthand, is that it's an abbreviated way to get to an idea. So a lot of my notes are ways that I can start kind of exploring form in a simpler way, or a less committed way. So again, I don't like the commitment of drawing like contour or like trying to figure out what representation is. So like we eventually get there, we do most of the time, especially if I have an eraser, which I don't today, so this is just going to be entirely additive. So additive just means that like I'm putting graphite down and never taking any away. I might blend a little if we get farther. And sometimes I consider some of my marks reductive, which is the opposite of additive. Too. So like some of these marks, they like denote form that isn't necessarily there, or I am using it as something to tell myself like, hey, this is a change of space. This is where one thing ends and one thing begins. Humor that, you know, like when you see your model start to shift into their chair and you feel the weight of their back leaning against the wood instead before they were like sitting upright and like taking a pose, you know, and it like those subtle changes, they get you, you can incorporate them into your image, and by the end you'll have like a very human, intimate portrait of someone rather than like a rigid, posed, perfected image. And hours on end, whereas like taking advantage of your loved ones to pose for a painting feels bad sometimes, especially when you know that they have so many other things that they could be doing that you're keeping them from. That figurative work has a lot of time in it, and that's what's so beautiful about portraits or other types of media. So likeness is a big part of what I do, even when being more abstract, or like responding to light, or like thinking about some of these kind of like visual cues, because likeness is a part of the abstraction of life. Like this space versus this space is a huge kind of construct of what identity is, you know, like those proportions, the shapes, like that shape I was talking about, that exaggerated form is a huge part of what makes us us. But there's always an element of likeness, because that abstraction, there's something I'm responding to in the world. So right now there's something I'm responding to about my face, about this portrait, that is making me play with the paper and graphite itself. Yeah, if I move this way, I can see spaces that I can't see in the drawing itself, because the light just gets brighter. Then I need to get more into the like direct goal, like what excites me about this perceptual moment, like the light, the angle. So if I held it like this on the next one, which I might do, that's gonna have a very different goal for me than this, just because I can see different shapes, I can see different abstract moments, and that's really why we draw from life. I feel like, you know, other than like if you have a goal of like telling a story or something, which when we're like, I'm doing this self-portrait, so it's like I don't have a story to tell other than like, oh hey, it's me. So I'm mostly responding to abstract kind of like shape relationships, like the weight of my head on this shoulder. So maybe what happens if I kind of exaggerate this form, bring it down a little bit in moments. I might switch to a different graphite, so this thinner one, just because I find I can get like, I hold it differently. So I hold this from the back, which is really useful for like making quick kind of maybe peaceful edits, you know, like they're like super light, super gestural, and they don't affect the image all that much until you get darker. And then very specific information needs to be like explained or like kind of communicated to be able to understand, like say this line of my nostril, that is defining the direction of my nose, which it doesn't happen as much with like say my lips. You know, there's a curve there which we can get into eventually, and I probably will or would depending on how far we go with this portrait. So this portrait, like I might do a couple portraits today, so we could spend time developing this portrait, or we could just move on and start a different kind of perceived moment eventually. I'm gonna hang out with this for a little bit just because I want to get somewhere. Another thing that's important for me as a painter too, especially, is so I used to try to break away from the format. So the box, like this big page that I'm working on, I used to try to break away from that a lot, and I've found that working perceptually or like observationally, defining your format. So you can have a non-conventional format, but like defining it gives you just so much value in terms of understanding where the limits are when you're looking at something. So being able to define the shapes on the outside of this box. So there's this right here, I'll draw it out for you. There's this big exterior box that's happening. And part of that feeling that I'm seeing has to do with this angle creating a shape on the outside of this box and this angle. So there's kind of this movement, and that makes the head feel like it's moving in. Whereas if we don't have this box, we don't have those shapes to kind of treat space differently, especially when there's a white background, which I have a white and a green background, so that like off green that you're looking at, and then this maybe I can show it in the, yeah, see that white thing right here. Those are my backgrounds, so that's not a lot of information to go on. I do have that line I was talking about, which kind of comes in and out because I'm holding the mirror and it's like moving around. Yeah. So this is where I'm starting to incorporate some of those like gestural marks that just, it tells me about what's going on in this shape or form. Oh man, I started looking at my face in a different perspective and I was like, yes, there's movement. But amount, and then I don't believe that you can overwork an artistic thing, but I do feel like sometimes I just start observing something different, and when I get to that point, I like to change it up, see what kind of comes of it. Let's see this angle here. When I can tilt it up. Yeah, the parallax effect is very legitimate. So that this is more perpendicular to the camera, or more parallel with the face of the camera, or my face as well. But we're just gonna hang out with this portrait like this because it's interesting anyway what that does. It's kind of like I forget what that's called, but there's a type of image that is skewed, and if you look at it from the right angle, you can see an an image. It's like a really old technique, but you also can see a version of it in one of Kerry James Marshall's recent paintings. I'm blanking on the name right now, and if anyone knows, you can comment. But yeah, or chat. Yeah, that's what we do here. Earlier, so we'll start a brand new one. This is what this looks like, kind of parallel to you. Yeah.